people ask, well, what does transformation mean? Fundamentally, it means getting back to ourselves. The real issue is not how to find meaning in life, for example, but what is it inside you that keeps you from knowing the meaning of your life? And psychedelics can open up those questions. And the questions are much more important than the answers.
So how are you doing this morning, Gabor?
Thank you. I'm well.
Okay, great.
By the way,
Um,
we can go a few minutes over. It doesn't have to be a sharp at 11, okay?
okay,
Or, or
that's
whatever your
good.
time. Yeah.
That's good to know. Okay, excellent. Just to apologize, I'm in a kind of allergy attack today. It's hay fever season in Berlin, so I may be coughing a little bit into the mic.
Okay.
Apologies ahead of time.
Should I put a mask on so I don't catch it?
I'm not sure. I think it's not contagious, thank God, through the screen.
That's good.
At least not yet with technology.
That's good.
Yes. So I'm Amit, and I am the director and a facilitator at the Kiyumi psychedelic-assisted retreats. And I've had the privilege over the last 3 years to be working with Gabor in this program together. Gabor, I'm very happy about our collaboration. It's been a real honor to be doing this over the last 3 years. And yeah, just thanks for being here and for doing this. And today we're going to be receiving some questions from the audience. So we've been collecting some of them over the last days. And we're also going to be talking about the potential of psychedelics, a little bit about your personal experience, Gabor, as much as you're willing to share with us,
Sure.
and the importance of integration in psychedelics, and a little bit about our upcoming psilocybin-assisted program that's starting in a month. So that's kind of the overview of what's happening. And I just wanted to, first of all, Gabor, I don't know how much you're aware of this or remember this, but just to kind of acknowledge the fact that it's been about 10 years since the first time we met each other, which was in Mexico, in the jungle, in a medicine container
Yeah.
where we were doing some healing work. And I just wanted to really acknowledge the fact that that was a huge moment in my life, and it was a very transformational, life-changing, and deeply healing experience.
Mhm.
And a lot of what I'm doing now and what we're doing within this program and within Kiyumi that kind of sprouted from that point. So it's like seeded, the inspiration came from there. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you to you for being that inspiration. And back then you were the facilitator, basically,
Yeah.
the one holding that space.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of your last times that you did that kind of work
No, that's
in
a lot of time. But that was a time when a couple of times a year I led retreats with plant ayahuasca in Mexico. And we developed this program of not just drinking the plant, but to create a container for it so that people would come, they would set their intentions, they would talk about their lives, get to know each other, create kind of a community, and then really open up about their issues, set intentions for the ceremony, which should be led by not by me, but by shamans, ayahuasqueros, and then prepare for the next ceremony. So it was an event about a week long, I think. We used to begin with 2 ceremonies, then we ended with 3. The whole idea was to create, at least for a week, an environment in which people could experience the opening that the psychedelics can provide, and then somehow integrate what they learned and what they experienced into their lives as much as we can over a week period. And that's the context where you and I met. Now, I continue to do that work for some years afterwards. I have not led a retreat retreat now for, mm, I think 4 years now.
Hmm.
But actually, that's not true. I did last year here in Canada with mushrooms. But anyway, that's when it was, and that was 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And that very much is, as I said, like the inspiration for this program that we're collaborating with you.
Yeah,
And really that idea of how to have that in-depth process, not only focused on the peak experience with the psychedelic, but what happens in the before, the after, the container of the preparation, integration, and community.
yeah.
So,
I think one of the mistakes, although I think that's being increasingly recognized and corrected now, is to put the emphasis on the psychedelic experience itself rather than how that experience can inform and support your life and what you can take from it into your daily life. So I think that process of integration. Well, first of all, preparation, going into ceremony, and then integration afterwards has been increasingly recognized by many
mm,
people now. What we try to do in this program.
yeah, yeah, and that's actually one of the follow-up questions that I was going to ask was to go a bit deeper into the integration. But if we're already on the topic, you have a very unique way of working. And, with our participants, you've been really supporting them in the before psilocybin ceremony and after stages.
Yeah.
And your style is basically to have a very intimate one-on-one process with individuals, but within a container of a group. So there's witnesses of that experience. And I find that very unique and very powerful. So I'm wondering, related to integration, how do you see also the importance of integration within that kind of process?
Well, so first of all, the method that I use with people evolved partly out of my work with psychedelics, although it's become something much bigger than that, and it's called compassionate inquiry. And the essence of it is that when people feel safe, when there's compassion present, and when you ask the right questions, the truth will emerge out of the individual. So I don't have to tell people the truth. The truth is in them. The truth of their own reality, of their own lives, is inside them. Provided the right questions and in a safe environment, compassionate setting, the truth will emerge for people. And so that's what I would bring to the preparation setting and the afterwards, the integration setting as well. Um, I do work with people intimately. It just so happens that I work with people online that might be in this program. I don't know, there might be 60, 70, 100 people online at any one time. And it's quite remarkable how open and vulnerable people are willing to make themselves in the presence of a whole lot of strangers or at least people that they barely know when they feel safe. So I think the whole program, the way you set it up, and also the participants, they provide the safety for each other.
Mm,
And then when I'm working with one person online, nothing is unique to anybody. Like we're all different, but our issues are so much the same, and our defenses are so much the same, and our um, fears are so much the same. So that when I'm working with one person, it's that person is working for everybody.
mm,
So it's not only that they're witnessing somebody else do the work, it's also that in witnessing somebody else do the work, they are doing the work. And
mhm,
that's what makes that group work so powerful.
mm. Yeah, very much so. And I just to mention about the compassionate inquiry part, the program is called Psychedelics and Compassionate Inquiry.
Yeah,
And beyond what's going to be happening with you, it's also there's going to be a bi-weekly, smaller, more intimate group of 15 people each
yeah,
with compassion inquiry mentors that you've trained yourself
yeah,
within your approach.
that's right.
So it's kind of that is the guiding approach to the whole process. and it goes from like the bigger group to a smaller group to the individual, and that's designed for those different layers of connection.
Yeah.
So to
And
segue to,
then they ask
sorry,
you, then what happens when you actually get together for ceremony? Because I've personally not been to one of your ceremonies.
yeah.
There.
So we have a whole retreat that happens. We have a 6-day retreat, and there's another whole layer of preparation and integration that comes with that. And there's a lot of one-on-one work with personal therapists and facilitators that are a part of our team. And then on the days of the ceremony, so we have pretty in-depth ceremonies that are different every time, of course, because that's just the nature of working with medicine. We work with soundscape designs and with live music and with a lot of, I think what's kind of unique about our approach is that there's a lot of individual holding, I would say,
Yeah.
not the whole time, but we work also, we're trauma-informed body workers as well in the team. So for whoever consents to it and agrees to it, there's also a layer of holding sometimes physically by hand or hugs, or just really being beside a person going through this journey, which many times in different approaches with plant medicines, there's a lot of this, okay, you go through this journey on your own, alone, in the dark, maybe as well sometimes. So we like to kind of weave in this contemporary approach meeting a traditional inspired approach as well.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of what happens in the ceremonies. So I wanted to ask you, Gabor, a question about possibility. Um, so what do you think is the potential of working with psychedelics in general for self-inquiry, growth, and healing, and for fostering a deeper connection with oneself, with others, and the world at large?
Yeah. Well, look, here's the reality of most human beings, you and me included, is that so much of what drives us and activates us and has us confused about who we are and who we are in the world. How do we react to things? So much of this is driven by unconscious factors, factors that beneath the level of conscious awareness much of the time. And to the extent that these unconscious dynamics rule our lives, we're not exactly free because we're not controlled. We're controlled by factors we don't see. We don't see. In a sense, we have these invisible strings from our unconscious pulling us this way and that way. Um, and there has to be ways of diving into that unconscious to see what the strings are and what are the actual motivations and what are the fears and the joys that might be activating us. Now, psychedelics are not the only way to get there by any means, but it's one powerful way to get there. And so people have been using psychedelics for thousands of years. Now, they also use them not just for what you might call therapeutic purposes, they use them for spiritual purposes. It seems to open up an aspect of our minds that's open to the larger spiritual realities. And that's how people have used them for a long, long time. But all that has to do with liberating the unconscious, at least temporarily, from the limitations of the conscious mind. And so psychedelics are, again, are not the only way to get there, but they're one particular way to get there, and they're particularly efficient way to get there. And so you get to see a lot of what what's inside you that you haven't been aware of. People get in touch with deep pain sometimes. People get in touch with emotional memories that they repress. Um, People get in touch with fear that's often driving living their lives, but they're not usually conscious of it because they're trying to run away from it all the time. Like people who are addicted, for example, are always trying to run away from their pain and from their fear and their plan and the psychedelic experience could say, well, here's the pain, here's the fear that you've been running away from. And maybe you don't need to run, maybe you need to deal with them.
Mm.
So psychedelics are like a vast opening to the unconscious, and both the terrors sometimes and very often the beauties that are hidden there. If this happens in a safe context, in the right container, with the right guidance, with with compassion and skill, it can be a real learning experience, as it has been for many people. If it doesn't happen in most contexts, it can sometimes go wrong. And as you and I both know, in the psychedelic world, there have been great successes, and there's increasing amount of research into all manner of psychedelics, from MDMA to mushrooms to ayahuasca, showing the potential benefits. And there have also been examples of what can go wrong when these things are not handled well. So it's just important that uh, if people are to do this, if they're going to open to themselves to this experience, that they do so in a context that's going to support their intentions.
Mm. Yeah, thank you, Gabor.
And
Um,
sometimes people ask questions like, if somebody's addicted, why are you using drugs to treat a drug addiction? This is a kind of a misunderstanding.
mm,
People use drugs to escape from themselves, to deny reality. People use psychedelics in the right context to come close to themselves and to get related to reality. Drugs
mm,
are used, whether they're Western medicines like antidepressants or whether they're illicit drugs like heroin and so on, cocaine, to get the desired effects, people have to use them every day over the long term. And that's what an addiction is, actually. But the psychedelics, you're not meant to use something every day. You're meant to use it a very few times in a very controlled setting. And then you're meant to go past it and not do it again, maybe for a long time. But it's not something that you're taking every day to change your biology, which is what drugs do, whether they're medically prescribed drugs for perfectly valid reasons, or whether they're addictive drugs like alcohol or nicotine or heroin or cocaine. You, you're taking them every day to change the biology of your brain. These medicines are not meant to be taken chronically. They're not to be meant to be taken without guidance. And that's meant to change your relationship to yourself so you don't have to rely on drugs. So this question of how can you use drugs to treat addictions is the wrong question. Um, in psychedelic use, the intention is to come closer to yourself. In addictive use, the intention is to run away from yourself. In one
mm,
case, you're not meant to use them daily for a long time. In the other case, that's the only way you can use them. So I've seen many examples with different substances. Like right now, they're doing studies with psilocybin and alcoholism. The initial
mm,
results are promising. Um, they've done certainly studies with uh, ibogaine and opiate addictions, and there's all kinds of studies done with MDMA and post-traumatic stress disorder. The results are on the whole very promising. So that there should be some legitimate caution around using psychedelics is entirely appropriate. They're not for everybody, but again,
mm,
the right context, with the right guidance, with the right intention, they can, for most people, be very helpful. Do they always work? No. Nothing in the world
mm,
always works except death. That always works. But
That's a
everything else,
guarantee.
that's a guarantee. But nothing else always works. And so, including life. But
Mm,
for a lot of people, it's beneficial. That's what I can say. And should everybody do it? No. Nobody should feel that they should have to do it. If it calls to you, and if you can find
mm,
context for it, yes. If it doesn't call to you, doesn't interest you, you shouldn't do it. And certainly with certain medical conditions, you shouldn't do it either. We're
mm.
not going to go through that right now, but if you're going to consider doing a psychedelic, you really need to check out, is it compatible with whatever mental health or medical condition I might have. For example, people with heart disease should not do ayahuasca.
Mm.
Um, People with certain mental health conditions, bipolar illness, psychosis, they should stay away.
Yeah. Thank you, Gabor. So, um, on that note, I would like to invite you maybe to share a little bit about your personal experience. And we received a question from one of the viewers
Mm-hmm.
from Kinai Fatos is your Instagram name. And the question is, in what ways has your path with plant medicine personally influenced you in your life, and what attracts you in it professionally as well?
Well, first of all, I just have to really clarify this. It's a very small part of what I do. I mean, I haven't worked with them except through your organization supporting the integration processing session. I haven't worked with psychedelics
Mm-hmm.
for years. I've just been too busy doing other things, and I have many. But in terms of my own path with it, I was first introduced to them after my book on addiction came out, and people kept asking me what I knew about psychedelics and healing addiction, and I knew nothing. And then when I had opportunity to find, I could see what they were talking about. So then I began to work with them in earnest. I've had insights doing psychedelics that have helped me um, in my personal life and in my professional work. Um, Also, just in these retreats that I used to lead, just the process of working with a group, I took that into my professional life, um, asking the right questions, um, knowing how to stay present with people, attuned to them. That was very much influenced by my psychedelic work. So, in my personal life, I've had great insights with psychedelics, which I can forget, which I can
Mm.
forget in a blink of an eye, unless I keep some kind of regular practice. I've seen people undergo tremendous transformations with psychedelics. I'm not one of them. I've had some wonderful experiences. I can't say for me that I can point to a dramatic transformation. And I've known many people who have had these dramatic transformations, including and often as a result of working with me in psychedelics. But if I was honest about it, I'd say no, the great transformations in my life have not come from psychedelics. They've
Mm-hmm.
helped, but for me, it's been elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, to explore a little bit deeper around the topics of purpose, meaning, play, and joy, which is kind of some of the qualities that we work with and we try to cultivate intentionally in the work that we do. And I often hear some participants describe this feeling of deeper connection with their relationships, with their bodies, with nature at large, and also expressing the sense of homecoming, remembering their essence, their authentic selves, and connection to the intelligence of life. Um, I'm
Yeah.
wondering, in those realms of playfulness, joy, freedom, is there anything you could speak to that?
Well, you just have, these are all these are all states that people can attain. And, curiosity and meaning and joy. These are essential aspects of who we are as human beings, and they're also needs that we have. People need to have a sense of purpose, sense of meaning. Um, Certainly, if you look at young infants, playfulness and joyfulness is such an important aspect of who they are. And when people ask, well, what does transformation mean? Fundamentally, it means getting back to ourselves. Um, it's not some big, mm,
Mm.
at least for me and from what I've seen, it's rarely some huge tsunami, earth, fireworks, volcanic eruption of something. It's more like the emergence of a truer self that's more connected to who you actually are. And that's hard to put into words because it's a really a bodily, psychological, spiritual experience. The real issue is not how to find meaning in life, for example, but what is it inside you that keeps you from knowing the meaning of your life?
Mm.
The issue very often is not who are you really, but what inside keeps you from knowing who you are. And psychedelics can open up those questions. And the questions are much more important than the answers.
Mm.
So all the topics that you just raised, Amit, the questions around them are much more important than the answers that we.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. Staying open and curious. Um, so I'm wondering if you can speak a bit to maybe the challenges. So, as we know, it can be challenging and even scary for some, especially beginners, to step into the great mystery, lean into the unknown, and meet these vulnerable parts of ourselves. Why
Sure.
even choose to go on that path?
Well, the biggest fear that people have is losing control. And but no, the desire for control itself comes out of fear. Usually, what happens is that when people are small and rather vulnerable, things went well for them. So they develop the idea that I got to be in control because if I'm not, I'm in danger. Now, when you go into a psychedelic experience, you're going to lose control.
Mhm.
Not in the sense you're going to go crazy, but in the sense that often you're not in charge. There's a process happening with you that you can resist or you can work with, but you can't control. So that's the big fear that people have. And sometimes people say to me, what are you out of your mind? And I say, yeah, I wish I was. Because the mind is such a narrow little control entity. And certainly under the psychedelics, you go beyond the mind. You know it. Now, there's a mind that's deeper and larger and more encompassing, but you're afraid of it. And so
Mm.
that fear comes up for a lot of people. In terms of
Mm.
actual risks, well, if you work with people who lack integrity, you might get exploited. If you lack with people who are not sufficiently, um, they they might not be able to support you when you go through some difficult stuff. And I've seen that. They're
Mm.
really good people, but they're not quite ready for the depth of somebody else's experience, and therefore they couldn't hold them in that experience. Now that can always be repaired afterwards, but at the time it can be rather daunting.
Mm.
So you just got to make sure that you feel comfortable with the people that you're working with, and that they have some kind of mm, expertise and skill and experience that you can check out to put yourself in the safest position possible. Um, I've seen people. mentioned this earlier, in the psychedelic world, people have become vulnerable under the effect of psychedelics, and they're looking for healing. Well, if somebody is not scrupulous, they can exploit that. I've seen that in the ayahuasca world. I've seen that in the MDMA world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, if you do due diligence and if you pay attention to your gut feelings, you can protect yourself.
Yeah. Thank you.
But I
Yeah.
do know, what I do know is that in this work that I've done with you, Amit, from what I can tell, the
Mm.
vast majority of people are so grateful for the experience. And it's not
Mm.
that the issues have all evaporated, but most of them come to a completely new relationship to their own life and to themselves in a way that allows them to deal with their issues in a transformed way, which is actually is the intention.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Gabor. It really is a privilege to witness these transformations, and as you said before, it's not that everybody the whole life's changed and everything is solved, but for many, the experience just touches the place that opens up maybe their heart a little bit or their ability to connect with other people deeper or within their relationships. And it's not always about a big shift that happens. It can be little micro shifts that, again, need to be maintained with practice, with integration, with the work that you do with it into your life.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Now, do we have time for a couple more questions from the audience? We have to go.
Yes. So we have a few questions from people, but how about can we answer two questions?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great. So one question we have from Francisca Alchemy. Question is, what do you think is the future of psychedelics?
Well, I'm not a soothsayer or a future teller. What I can say is that because of the increasing distress and stress and anxiety globally, certainly in the Western world, people are looking for alternatives, and also because of the general state of the Western medical system to address people's mental health issues, addictions, um, except through chronic medications, which sometimes help and sometimes they don't. But because of the increasing alienation and stress society on the one hand and on the inadequacies of the Western medical system, more and more people are looking for alternatives. And so that in the last 20 years or more, we've had a resurgence of research, a lot of serious research, and a lot of people train psychedelic therapists, a lot of programs training people. So I see it as increasing and is increasing. Um, I don't think it's going to change the world. I think that's a much bigger issue. But I think as a move grow and more people are going to be looking to it. Now, the problem, as always, is that we live in a world of vast inequalities. A lot of people need help and would benefit. They can't afford it. And that's a reality. I don't know how to address it, except to say it's a reality. So that even to talk about psychedelic healing, we're doing so from a position of relative privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And unless there's social, political recognition of the value of these modalities, so that governments are willing to pick up the cost of helping some people with PTSD or addictions or other challenges have access to these modalities, it's going to be limited to a relatively privileged few. That's the reality. I wish it was otherwise, but it's how it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to say something to that is that we think a lot about that topic because it costs money, a substantial amount of money to participate in our programs. And we've been, over the last years, we've had an equity program and a scholarship
Yeah.
program for unrepresented, marginalized communities like BIPOC and queer community. But in the end of the day, there's a limit of how many people you can support
Yeah.
per year. So that really the intention is to work on that and deepen that, and at some stage support as many people as possible that couldn't otherwise afford these privileges at this stage. Okay, so here's another question. From Harriet Christine. How can psychedelic experiences support us to give compassion to our guilt and shameful voices deep inside?
Well, I've seen this under the psychedelic experience. You get to recognize those voices of guilt and shame as nothing but little kids trying to protect you in your family of origin. So they came along at a very early age in response to something that happened. They have meaning in their own right. There were responses that kept you in line with the expectations of the world that you were born into. And their job is to tell you that if you don't follow us, you're a bad person. But once you actually get to see them, the helpless creatures that you are, you have compassion for them. And when they arise, you just say, well, hello, I hear you, but you know what? I don't need your advice anymore. So that's a very common experience for people to come to a compassionate relationship with these demeaning voices inside them, including guilt. They're not enemies. They came along at a certain point in their own particular way to help you. They don't realize that they're not helping you anymore, but you can realize it, and you can see them not as tyrants, but as little tykes that you don't have to give a whole lot of power to.
Mm. Right. Um, do we have time for one more question, or should we close it
No,
up?
sorry, I need to go because I have other stuff coming.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. So yeah, just thank you to everybody that's been here today. Thank you so much, Gabor. It's a pleasure as always to talk to you. I just wanted to mention a few last words about the upcoming program. So to all the viewers, everything we talked about today is themes that we are exploring in the program. And if any of this resonates with you and you feel the calling to join us, you are very, very welcome. You can find all the information on the website. So it's at kiyumi.org, KIYUMI.org, and or on our Instagram directly in the link trees at Kiyumi_retreats. And just to say, some of the highlights are, of course, the sessions with Gabor. There's going to be the 6-day psilocybin retreat. There's going to be the compassionate inquiry circles with the compassion inquiry mentors, and a lot of one-on-one attention from our team of therapists. So that's just some of the components. And for any more details, you can communicate with us, connect with us. And yeah, that's about it in a nutshell. Thank you, Gabor. Is there anything else you want to say before we check out?
No, thanks, Amit. I'll see you soon. And thanks, everybody, for being here with us.
Thank you, Gabor.